Hi folks, I'm super happy to report that the A9III has been announced, also the 300mm gem and also the firmware updates for the A1 and the A7S III. And today I want to dig into all of those new products and firmware updates. And first of all, I want to thank all my sources for sharing the correct info. All rumors except the pricing info of the A9III were correct, and the pricing info was wrong for a very funny reason I will explain later. But anyway, the intention of this video is to share my opinion about the new A9III. I know I didn't have the chance to play with the camera, so you can't have a real solid final opinion on a camera until you didn't really test it on the field. But based on the specs, we can already say that this is quite an exceptional camera. Of course, not only because of the global shutter, there are also some other cool features. But now let's start to dig into all the newly announced stuff. Let's kick off with the firmware update. The good news is that firmware update will be coming for the A1 and the A7S III. The actually bad news is that it's coming probably around March only, so we will have to wait 5 months. So that's kind of a disappointment. I don't know why Sony takes so long to give us that firmware update, but let's dig into the features. The A1 will get breathing compensation and relay playback, and the A7S III will get breathing compensation and DCI 4K 24p. Both will get EPTC and FTP workflow enhancement, and also the new C2PA proof of authenticity support. This is a very big news. So far only the Leica M11P has that feature. It's a sort of feature that lets you prove that your image is not AI generated or faked in any way. It's still not a perfect system, but it's a very big step forward for photographers that want to protect their copyright. And so this is quite nice to get. Also the A9III will have that very same feature. Now let's talk quickly about the 300mm GM 2.8. We knew that lens was coming. We knew that it would be an optically perfect lens. I had no doubt. GM lenses are actually nearly always stunning, and I think at the moment Sony is leading on two fronts, on the sensor front but also on the lens front when compared to the competition. The 300mm gem is super light, is very well balanced and super sharp. I saw a couple of reviews on YouTube, people tested it out, and it's indeed confirmed that this lens has basically no flaws. And I hope that from now on Sony will offer some of the telephoto primes and lenses that Nikon and Canon do offer. That I think there is some room for Sony to catch up, but I think they will do it quickly. Now let's talk about the big new thing, the new A9III. It has that new global shutter, it records 120 frames per second, it has 180,000 sec of shutter speed and improved ergonomics. I know some of you were a bit disappointed when I posted as first the rumor that the A9III would have a global shutter with 24 megapixel resolution. We were all expecting to get a resolution bump, but probably there was a good reason for Sony not to do so, because the global shutter is a very data intensive technology. You read out all pixels at once, and so it takes a lot to transfer the data, and increasing the resolution to 33 megapixel would really make it very challenging for Sony. So I think they decided to keep the 24 megapixel resolution to not compromise on speed and on the global shutter feature. And when I saw the video presentation of the A9III, including some detailed insights about the benefits of the global shutter, I actually started to think that the news is really bigger than I thought it would be, because you really get rid with some limitations we were actually born with since the era of photography. So like for example the flash sync speed. Now you can use the flash at any speed, so it will open up new possibilities. It's also great that you don't have any flickering issue anymore, something that I just had recently while shooting a documentary high on a mountain inside a mountain hut, where there was the neon light and some light outside, and the mix-up created some terrible image. And if I would have that global shutter camera, I would have no more to worry about. So there are real benefits inside that global shutter. The very important news is that Sony has solved the issue with the drop in image quality. You know that rolling shutters usually have better image quality than global shutter, but they seem to have solved it using a stack sensor technology on the global shutter and a fast readout. It's starting to rain right now, but I still want to talk to you. I'm not in my house, and because there are people in the house that are making noise, kids, so I prefer to stay outside under the tree. And the big features also the 120 frames per second. Also has Precapture, so it means that if you half press the shutter, you keep taking images, and once you hit the shutter, it will record the 120 frames before that, so you're sure to not miss any moment. Probably the limitation here is that it can keep that speed only up to 196 frames per second, 14-bit RAW, so at max possible quality. You can of course reduce it to have a larger buffer, but at max quality you can record nearly 2 seconds only. Of course it's 120 frames per second, so only is not meant in a as the discreditory way towards the A9III, but it's something you have to be aware of. And I think maybe the limitation here is also the card, because they are using the Express Type A card, not the Type B card, which would allow for even faster readout. But the Type A card is getting a new update, so maybe in future they can increase the buffer of the camera, but that's just speculation for now. The great thing about the 120 frames per second is that it works with all lenses, so you don't have limitations using the lens. It will not drop in frame rate. It also works perfectly well with autofocus. The autofocus works for all 120 frames per second, which is kind of crazy. And another good news is that also the EVF of the A9III will have a native 120 FPS without drop in resolution. You can even increase it to 240 FPS. You would have a bit less resolution, but 120 FPS is just crazy. Now let's move on to other specs. It has a new C5 custom button near the mount on the front of the camera, and this is kind of useful because you can, for example, decide to shoot your sports event at 20 frames per second, but if you want to have that suddenly that 120 frames per second, you can customize that button, push it, and you get instantly 120 frames per second until the buffer runs out. It has that ultra fast 1 to 80,000 shutter speed, so this is kind of very important for sports photographer, and if you use a flash you can also use it at that speed, so that's kind of crazy. It also has the most advanced autofocus system to date with 759 autofocusing points that cover 95.6% of the frame, and the precision works until -5 stops. What I didn't expect them to achieve is also an increase in the performance of the image stabilization, so it's now 8 stops, which is kind of top notch, and it works. That's 8 stops without the in-lens stabilization, which adds another kind of stabilization and improves it even further. There are also many improvements on the grip, so the grip is now more ergonomic. It enhances operability, it reduces fatigue. It also has a new shutter button design, the C5 button of course, and it also uses the 4-axis LCD that we already know from the A7R5, so that's actually the best in class, and I'm happy the A9III got it too. The EVF has 9.44 million dot resolution with 120 frames per second with highest display quality. It also has a new grip that also has the C5 button on it, so that's very useful. And what I also heard is that it can drain both batteries at the same time. Apparently that can help with the battery life. The pricing is $6,000, which is high but kind of okay if you consider this is the world's first mirrorless full-frame camera for sports photographers that has global shutter, 120 frames per second. It's much higher than the rumored price I had, which I got 2 months ago. And actually the source really got it from Sony. The problem is Sony got it wrong. Those Sony managers got it wrong from Sony Japan, and there was in the meantime a correction, and I didn't get the info about the correction, so sorry for that, but all the other rumors were correct. But you have to spend $6,000. Probably the one thing that bothers me even more is that the camera will be only available in spring 2024. This kind of also supports that rumor I got that the A9III was actually scheduled to be announced in January. I don't know for what reason why they decided to anticipate the announcement, but anyway, 5-6 months to wait to get the camera in spring. So now the rain stopped, but the cleaning lady is making some noise. Sorry, but that's quite unprofessional, but it's an improvised video, and I wanted to quickly give you my opinion on the camera. To wrap it up, I think this is a wonderful innovation. Finally, we got a new kind of sensor that is very different from others. I also want this global shutter to be in all mid to high-end alpha cameras in the future, because I can see clear benefits for myself too, and I'm a stills photographer and street photographer, not a sports photographer, but I can see that the global shutter brings me some clear advantage, particularly in weird light conditions, and of course also if the subject I'm tracking is moving. And it still happens on the A7R5 that I'm using, that I have to throw away some shots because they are distorted, because the electronic shutter is not really 100% reliable. So having the global shutter would make sure that the picture I am taking is the picture that I really will record without any weird distortions or artifacts. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I told you, I have more rumors to come, because there's another high-end camera from Sony coming, probably in January, and I still don't know what it is, so I hope to figure out in the next days and weeks what's coming. And also I have some first rumors about other manufacturers. The next one is about Panasonic, but there will be also Leica and Canon rumors coming. I hope you enjoyed the A9III announcement. Those were my thoughts about the new camera. As soon as I have the chance to play with it, I will share a more serious, advanced, in-depth review. In the meantime, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I see you soon, folks.